Hi, it's me, the guy the show is named after. You know. You know what I did this weekend? Sunday night, Halloween. You know what I did? You know those murder mystery shows where you're at a party and then there's a dead guy and then a detective walks in and he starts accusing people and makes jokes about it and there's a lineup and all that stuff and then they solve it and if you're right you get points or whatever or you win the prize or whatever. I did one of those. I don't mean as a guest. I mean I acted in one of those. My friend Eric Sharp, you know him. He was on an earlier episode, magician, actor, he and so on. He runs one of those murder mystery things. And his regular guy couldn't make it for one of the roles, so he hit me up. He said, "Hey, are you free on Halloween night?" I said, "Well, yeah, I'm not really doing nothing serious planned for sure." So we met at his place in the valley. He and I and my two new friends, Jason and Chris Ann, got in his car, drove up to the desert, and the whole time I'm going, what do I do? And I kind of followed Jason and Eric's lead. Jason's been helping Eric for years on this. It's like, it's easy. They've been doing this for a long time. So to them, it was nothing. To me, it was a big deal. Why is it a big deal? Because I was out of control. I wasn't even driving the car. I didn't even know where we were going. It was somewhere in Tehachapi. That's all I knew. But I employed the trust that Eric had in me. He said, "Look, I'm hiring you for this thing." And I'm thinking, okay, obviously he trusts me to do it. Therefore, I must know what I'm doing. So why worry about it? I worried about it because that's what I do, which Eric said he appreciated. He said, that shows you care, and I really appreciate that. That said, don't worry about it. You got this. And doggone it, if he wasn't right, it was easy. I mean, there were a few things I had to do. It's like, make sure you hit this point. Here's where you come out and say this. And the rest of the time, just kind of watch. If I throw the ball your way, just kind of react, throw it back. And I did, and it was all fine. It all went great. He loved me. The crowd had a great time. That's the important thing. He said, "Look, it's kind of a party and we're sort of crashing it. It's not about us, it's about them. And in those moments where we do the show, then we do the show. The rest of the time, they're having a party. They're eating and drinking. They all kind of know each other. They're having fun." And it was also a costume party on top of that because it was Halloween. I ended up as the judge of the costume contest. No, I didn't freak out. Yeah, I kind of freaked out. I'm going, geez, what if I give the prize to the wrong person? So I ran it by a few other people and I'm like, okay, how about this prize to this person, this prize to this person, so on. And of course, it worked out just great. And I bring all this up because my guest this week is all about personal empowerment, healing yourself, trusting yourself. She is Dr. Roberta Kung. She is an anesthesiologist, but more than that, anesthesiology, I think, is more the path she took to end up where she is today. She even says she's thinking of kind of retiring from anesthesiology not too far in the future. What she is now is a healer and a mentor. She talks about how, as an anesthesiologist, she doesn't just put people to sleep and send them a bill. She helps guide them through the process in ways that a lot of anesthesiologists do not do. But I say they could. We talk about that. We talk about her origins and how she got into the medical field and what she would tell 17-year-old Roberta now. That's really interesting. She had a really interesting answer to that one, I thought. And she talks about what she does now, which is she runs a company called Gifted Taste. It can be found at giftedtaste.com, where she helps women find their true potential. She creates a space for them to figure that out. And it's all part of a journey that she did. That she didn't know she was going to do this when she started out. She was just following that inner voice. And look what it's led to. So that's the message. Follow your inner voice and trust yourself. And I trust you to spend the next 45 minutes listening to this, what I think is one of the best interviews I've ever had with Dr. Roberta Kung. Okay, a couple more things I forgot to tell you. Number one, there's shadows on my face. I'm not sure why. I blasted that with light, and I still couldn't get the shadows off my face, but I did the best I could. I also changed my background. After chatting with Christina Job, the commercial producer, it made me think about the messaging and the imaging and all that. So instead of having some background that I put in on the green screen, I just hung kind of the slate blue sheet there, going, okay, let's make it neutral. Let's make this a little more clinical, because this is serious business. And I also wore the anchor shirt per her advice. So I'm experimenting with form. Also, a bit of an audio issue. There's kind of this annoying kind of scratching noise or something during the interview the whole time. I overlooked it. I hope you can too. After all, what did you pay for this?
Dr. Roberta Kung, thank you for your time. How are you?
I'm so good, and I'm so happy to be here, Joe. You
Good.
always bring a smile to my face.
Thank you. Well, I aim to please, which I don't now already that sounds a little bit codependent, doesn't it? Which
But
it
you have
says
awareness, so that's okay.
you're right. You're right. That's the important thing is that I'm aware of it. And we will get to that. Just the pre-interview already, we've covered a lot. So let's get right to it. You are originally from Southern California, correct?
I was born in Buffalo, New York, but I've lived pretty much here all my
Okay.
life.
And did we had breakfast once with our friend Susan Ruth, and you mentioned that you were a descendant of Confucius. How many generations ago was this?
76. So I'm
How
the
do you
76th generation of
You're the
Confucius.
76th generation of Confucius.
Right.
Now, how do you know this? Because as I said at that breakfast, my grandma was from Chicago. And beyond that, I have no idea. How do you know that you are the 76th generation from Confucius?
I think growing up in a Chinese household that was very traditional in many ways, that's actually how I came to know that. From a very young age, I was told that, and we were respected in the community as that. And people would always say, "Oh, you are in Mandarin Chinese, you are the 76th generation," and so there were certain things that you were held to. So I think that was also very subliminal throughout and very overt throughout my childhood, and so that became a standard that I always felt was present, um, and that was really how I came to know that.
So you're respected in the community in part because of that. Now, did you also think that there was some, I don't know, divine trajectory that was ahead for you because, well, I'm descended from Confucius, therefore I'm going to go off and do great things? Or were you pressured to go off and do great things?
It's interesting because as a child, you don't really know that much about Confucius other than people were repeating it, and you would see the name in fortune cookies. I mean, that was kind of how it came. Confucius said. So, yeah, as a child, I really did know. It was only until I remember very specifically in my modern civilization class in high school, that we were studying Confucianism and Taoism. And that was really my first inkling of, wow, how powerful Confucius was and the ripple effects to modern day. I think then I had that awareness, but even then, it wasn't what I understand it to be now. So I think it's been an evolution of my understanding. And so, in answer to your question, no, I didn't have that so much, but where I am today, it's pretty powerful in what I do and what I see myself doing in the future.
I want to drill down on this for a second. Can you put into layman's terms like what it's like, how you can feel this sort of connection and how it informs your life today?
Sure. I think part of it goes back to being an anesthesiologist and being a healer, and being what I do, and being a mentor. What I do now is I mentor people at different stages in their lives, particularly women in life and love. And that's what I talk about. And I think as a mentor, a teacher, and a guide, so much of my experience comes from my lived experiences. So I think in that way, that is how it is really relevant to me. And I keep on going back to, well, Confucius had a lot of incredible things that he said, but a lot of it was based on what was going on in the world. And, with the history of the Chinese history, if you look at Confucianism and Taoism, and we talked earlier about this at our breakfast, that Confucius, a lot of his philosophies about life came about with what was going on in the warring states in China at the time. So there was a lot of wars going on, and there was a lot of anarchy and chaos. And he established this system of society where it was hierarchical to create balance and order at the time. So for me, I continue to look at what is going on in the world and what can I glean from it and how is that relevant to my life and what can I share based on my experiences. But they're experiences of not just tremendous joy, they're also experiences of tremendous pain. Most of us have experienced that. And I think for me, modern day, how that looks is how do I continue to integrate and share my pain and see it as an opportunity for tremendous growth and healing, not only myself, but for other people around me. So I think that's how it is relevant to what I am today. I am an anesthesiologist, but I practice healing and finding my purpose of healing. That is where I realize that is my greatest gift and what I have to contribute to be of service.
Wow, and we'll get to the arc of that, because when you started, you went to medical school,
Yes.
and what prompted you to choose medical school?
I think often when we see things that happen to us early in life, sometimes it's not an active, we may think it's an active choice, but I believe it was a choice that was made for us and that it often finds us. And when we allow ourselves, even at that young age, to flow with what is meant to be, things happen, things transpire. So even at a young age, I don't know if you would say at that age, I was saying, I'm going to flow with the universe. I wasn't. It was in a way the path of least resistance. It may look difficult from the outside as, oh, you have to study for medical school. But in my childhood, that literally was the easiest path because both my parents were in the medical profession. Um, and beyond that, the inspirations that came to me were in the medical and healing world. So, I think along those lines, with my childhood, I had a very challenging childhood, beautiful family, I think, in a lot of ways. And they were all gifts, but a very troubled family. And both my parents were finding their way in a lot of ways. And so our household was very disruptive. So for me, finding peace and going off at the age of 17 to go to medical school was to me, in a way, a respite for me because I can concentrate on something and stay focused. And that was a distraction, staying focused on one thing so we wouldn't look at all the other things that brought us pain and discomfort. So going away for 6 years to the middle of nowhere where I knew nobody, to Kansas City, Missouri, but I really loved the medical program. And I thought I could come back in 6 years, I'll have my MD and I'll be self-sufficient. And that was my goal for that time. So in a way, that's kind of how that came about.
Wow. I was going to save this question for later, but I think I'll ask it now. What would modern day Roberta say to high school Roberta about that decision? Would you still make the same choice? Because it sounds like a smart career choice, obviously. And therein lies the confusion of a lot of choices we make in life, because some of them organically make sense, but overlapping that can be some fear, can be some avoidance, can be some, getting away some kind of pressure and so forth. What would you tell high school Roberta about that choice?
Oh, another great question. Joe, I think what I would tell the 17-year-old Roberta is continue to trust your intuition. You're on the right path. You may not know certain things going on and you may be challenged tremendously. People may be telling you different things, but continue feeling what you're feeling. And what you're feeling is that you need to create space for yourself. So however it looks, you're on the right path and keep on going. I think that's what I would tell Roberta. I would give her the confidence to know that she's doing the right thing and not to tear herself up so much internally, because I suffered a lot of physical pain from self-doubt. And if anything, it was a self-doubt that created the physical problems that I had to deal with. My disordered eating for so many years, it was rooted in self-doubt. So that's what I would tell Roberta, is you're on the right path.
Wow. Do you think you still would have gone to medical school?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Having said that, right, it's interesting because how I've evolved what I'm doing today, but I absolutely needed that at that time. And I still do, because I still so much integrate everything that I've learned in medical school, but I've also taken it to the next level, which is really integrating spirituality with what I've learned about modern medicine and how that's relevant to living in modern day.
And I think choices like that are more generational, because our parents' generation of any culture, I think it was just, here's your job, this is what you do for 40 years, and then you quit and you go play golf. And that was the arc. And I think our generation is more like, well, let's try that, but it led to that, and I hate that, and I'm not going to do that. And I don't know anybody my age, I think we're roughly the same age, where they've done the same thing for 30 years. I think they bounce from thing to thing, especially in the arts. There are so many comedians who became actors and writers and producers and so on. There aren't too many comedians who stayed comedians this whole time. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, talk about this program, because it was a 6-year program. Because I'm thinking 4 years for a bachelor's in biology or something, and then med school. But it was hybrid. What was this?
Yes. It was an integrated medical program. So we were learning about the arts at the same time that we were learning medical terminology. I remember the first day of school, it was medical terminology, and I was also studying art history. which was beautiful because, as we know now, there is so much between the arts and science and modern medical science. So I look back and think, what a brilliant visionary program, which is I knew when I first heard about the program, I thought this is truly visionary. So throughout the 6 years, what we did was we went to school pretty much year round. We were given a month off during the year. And the rest of the time, it was pretty much we were in class, in session.
Wow. So after 6 years, you're done. And then why anesthesiology? Of all specialties, what led you to that?
Anesthesia chose me. I didn't choose anesthesia. I wanted to be an eye surgeon. I wanted to operate on eyes. And you may not know this, but I loved being in the operating room. But I didn't have, for ophthalmologists, they were the top tier in medical school. That's who they were. And I was not that top tier. I was right in the middle. So because of that, I did not match in ophthalmology. And that threw me in a tailspin, truly, because up until that point, everything I had set my heart on, set my goals on, I had achieved. And at the age of 23, when you're hit with something so big, when it's reality, like you're not in control, that became one of the first big turning points of my life. I became what now I know was probably depressed. I was really blue. And I came back to Los Angeles and decided that I'm just going to do my internship at UCLA. And after my internship, I was just going to trust what was going to happen. For a moment, I actually entertained going into the Peace Corps, because interesting too, it's like I needed to find peace. I needed to find myself. And such as things transpire, it didn't happen because I realized that I needed to move forward. And looking at anesthesia, I thought I can be in the operating room. And I'd always tutored. When I was in medical school, I tutored pharmacology to pharmacology students taking their boards. I worked part-time in a medical school. So I thought, well, why anesthesia continues to be knocking at my door, medicine, pharmacology. So I started a program there very quick. And again, the path of least resistance. I had invitations to go to both UCLA and USC. And I thought, I'm going to go to USC. Something just sounds right about that. It's USC's culture is, do one, see one, teach one. And it's like, that's me. So, and that's really how it started. And so I began my residency in anesthesia, and that was a tremendous turning point. I loved it. I absolutely loved anesthesia.
And you knew right away, this fits.
It felt right. It felt right. It did.
You said something. I listened to your podcast on Susan Ruth's Hey Human podcast, which I recommend to everybody. It's amazing the people that she finds as guests. That when a patient is under, you're whispering to them to help them through the process, and you explained it so beautifully on the podcast. Can you tell that idea again?
Sure. I think a lot of this goes back to kind of your first question too about going into or your other question about going into anesthesia. I feel as an anesthesiologist over the years, my practice has evolved so much because my perspectives and my perceptions about what I am really changed. And, early on I was putting people to sleep. And people would always joke, oh, you put people to sleep. And then over the years I would joke, oh, and I also wake them up, and they would laugh. But what I realized was that I was saying that because what I was realizing was what I honored so much wasn't the act of putting people to sleep. It was the ability that I had to come into their lives and to create a new perception in their minds before they wake up. I was in a way shifting their perspectives about certain things. And if you can recall, if you've ever had anesthesia, when you go in and have a procedure, and we did a lot of large procedures, people are always very fearful of the outcome, always very fearful. They're fearful of waking up. So going to sleep, they go to sleep with a lot of anxiety. And as I saw my role as a healer and not just somebody putting somebody to sleep technically, I realized that if I completely embrace what I do to heal people, I can, one, calm a lot of their nerves and their anxieties about going to sleep. Because when you go to sleep in a certain way, you'll wake up in a certain way. So oftentimes, as we know in personal experience, if you're upset when you go to bed, you'll have nightmares and you'll wake up feeling unrested. But if you're calm, and this goes to meditation and mindfulness, before you go to sleep, you'll wake up very calm and well rested. So for me, I thought, what a great opportunity. People are coming in scared, and I can put their hearts and their minds to rest. So before they would go to sleep, I would always say to them too, you are in such good hands. And it started even before the day of anesthesia. I would talk to them the night before, just so they would hear my voice and they would have this comfort level. And in the next day, they would hear, oh, that's my anesthesiologist, even if I'm in the other room. Oh, hi, Dr. Kung. Then going to sleep, it was the same thing. Now there was that trust that they had in me. And the next level would be, take some nice deep breaths. You're going to do so well. The procedure is going to clear and you're going to wake up healthy, happy, and feeling really good. And you're going to take some nice deep breaths. So I'm at that point empowering them with their healing. You are in charge. You're just not giving it up to all of us. You're taking your deep breaths. And I ask them to take deep breaths with the oxygen. During the procedure, very mindful, and this is setting the intention for them. And I ask permission to rest my hands on my patients. And I do. And when I've never had anyone say no. And when I rest my hands on them, it's my energy that I bring to them, that healing energy of calm and of love, of openness. They go to sleep. And when they wake up from anesthesia, I do the same thing. I have my hands on them and I start talking to them and whispering to them in their ears behind the drapes. And at that point, their body function, they may not be able to move because they're coming back from the paralyzing agents, but they can hear. So going to sleep, hearing is one of the last things that goes. And when you wake up, it's one of the first things that comes to your consciousness. So as I'm speaking to them, I'm also saying the same thing. The surgery went beautifully. Take a nice deep breath. You're going to start to wake up. You're going to be able to, but try not to move. I would say to them, try not to move. So here they were starting to come out, but in a very peaceful way. So I was bringing them up. Like most people say, anesthesia is likened to what a pilot does, right? You have the takeoff and the landing is the most important, and the in between is just the in between. So in the same way, as they're coming up, and I'm whispering these things to them, by the time they're fully awake, they're at a place of calm and believing that they are active in their healing process. Because as we all know, the surgery is one aspect. The healing, the rehabilitation goes tremendous to your ultimate overall healing. So I think in this way, like I shared before, I'm an anesthesiologist. I can put you to sleep with many, many different kinds of medications. But what I bring to the table is something very different than anybody else would bring. And this is kind of how I've stepped into who I am as a healer and using anesthesia as a platform, the medical aspects of it. I know all of that. But the other part of me is I'm bringing my spirituality, is who I am as a healer, as somebody who's empowering you to be your own healer into this process. That change or that shift is what has brought me so much fulfillment, Joe, in what I do. I don't practice anesthesia full time. And that's actually slowing down very much so, where I see myself in the next 2 years no longer practicing anesthesia, but what I'm stepping into is who I am as a healer and creating space for people. And this is a natural kind of an evolution of what Gifted Taste is what my company. And I think that is also beautiful because again, it's in a way the path of least resistance. It's honoring who I am, but it's also utilizing all of the things that I've learned throughout my 30 years of practice as an anesthesiologist.
There's so much to unpack here. My God. Now, first of all, it speaks to this side of you that always wanted to heal, as opposed to just, well, I'm going to be an anesthesiologist. I'll put them to sleep. I'll wake them up and, have a nice day. But there's that side of you saying, no, I'm a healer. How can I use what I know and combine that and merge that with my urge to heal? Do other anesthesiologists do this? Was this covered in anesthesiology school, or was it alluded to, or was it something you started to pick up as you did the job?
I wish it was covered in medical school, not even in anesthesia. I wish we would have started this in medical school when people start exploring why truly they are here in that first day of class. Why are you here? I think that would have been tremendous. And in anesthesia, absolutely not. And I think that's all our personal journey. Many anesthesiologists would look at me and roll their eyes, and I doubt it. And I never share this. I didn't share this with other anesthesiologists, mind you. I didn't. Even to this day, I don't really share what I do. And I think partly because it's my personal journey and fulfilling what I feel like my purpose is. Everybody has their own purpose. And I don't want to come across as that I know more than anybody else about their own journey. So this is my personal journey of what I believe that my mission here is for. So no, it's not something.
But do you think, and obviously choosing to share is a personal choice, but it seems like, just to what I'm hearing you say, it seems like this would work if other anesthesiologists did it. And I'm wondering, is the day going to come when somebody, if not you, then another anesthesiologist is going to publish their findings and say, hey, everybody, look, this actually works. Maybe more of us should start doing it. Do you think it doesn't sound like something that you're the only person can do. It sounds like this could be applied by other anesthesiologists.
Oh, Joe, I love that you said that this isn't something that only you can do, because herein, taking it outside of anesthesiologists, I believe each individual doesn't even have to go to medical school, become an anesthesiologist, or have surgery, or be put under to do what I'm doing in the way and embracing themselves. That is what I want to be able to share. So I'm so grateful that you mentioned that, because we are all our own greatest healers. And if we can look at all the synchronicities in our life, of our lived experience, we can truly step into the power of how do we go forward and not only healing ourselves, but affecting change in the world. People can actually empower themselves to really becoming their greatest healer by applying everything that I just did. And that is really my goal. And I feel as an anesthesiologist, I met people where they were, and this is modern medicine. They wanted a doctor who gave them medication to say, now you're going to be okay because I've given this to you and I'm in the white coat and I'm all knowing. The reality, going back to being a teacher and a mentor in life, is that as a mentor, and this is what I do, that is my passion, is mentoring people in life and in their life, is to be able to empower themselves and to say, my lived experiences is a message to me. Every synchronicity that's happening, Joe and I coming on this conversation, why are we having this conversation? There's a symbolism behind our experiences. When we can slow down, create space for ourselves to look at what are those messages through the symbolism, this is our path. It becomes very clear what we're doing and whether or not we're on the right path or whether or not we need to shift in what we do. So for what I do now is I create space for people as a mentor. It's not about, I don't call myself a coach. I feel like that it's really tapping into people's inner knowing. We know within us what is right or what doesn't feel right, at least the feeling part of it. We may not know, we will feel. If we could create space to feel what that feels like, we will know the right answer. But so much of society, modern society, is taking away, disempowering people. Physicians disempower people traditionally. That's what we were taught in medical school. I remember even when I came out in residency and I was moonlighting. I was moonlighting at a industrial medical clinic. And the doctor who was in charge said to me, no matter what, Roberta, always have them leave. Give them Tylenol, give them Motrin, but give them our Tylenol and Motrin. You don't tell them to go buy it. We charge 10 times as much. But they want, it's not just the money, they want to know that they've gotten something, they've gotten value. So our society is based on, you give me something, even though it disempowers me, but you've given me something, it's worth the money. So here, this is what we've been taught. So to the day where we disempower our society with what they're able to do, so much of what they can do, they don't need to go see a doctor. But when they go see a doctor, what happens? They have to pay for additional costs. Society has to pay for this. Consider, is this why our medical care and our healthcare system has become so two-tiered, the haves and the have-nots, and why everybody doesn't have access to healthcare? So these are all things that we have to look at. And for me, I went on saying, I was given the opportunity to be an anesthesiologist. Why? To really understand the ins and the outs of what I was doing, giving people drugs, putting people to sleep, hooking them on this. So my natural journey was, no, I'm awakening people. So Joe, when I had my own awakening in 2013, I recognized that, again, what's the symbolism? Because if you look at the 12 universal laws, right, there's a universal law of correspondence, which is as above, so below, as within, so without. everything is a reflection of what's going on internally. So when I saw that I was awakening inside, I wanted to awaken people. And guess what? I had a platform. I was an anesthesiologist. Everybody came to me to be put to sleep. And what was I doing in my work? I was awakening people while they were coming out from anesthesia. So there is the metaphor, there's a symbolism, and my purpose, why I'm here. I can speak to those people, to the doctors who were putting people to sleep in one and done, and then also to the patients, because they were still coming to me. In my children's schools, I remember mothers would come to me and say, you know, Roberta, you're a doctor. What should I do with my 4-year-old? And I remember saying, I'm an anesthesiologist. I can tell you from the standpoint of a mother who's a doctor, but I can't tell you from the standpoint of a pediatrician. That was my opportunity to connect with the people in my world, right? To see that. And in the end, the advice that I gave them was from the standpoint of being a mother. That woman who came to me, she was a mother. She had experience. She didn't need to come to the doctor anesthesiologist for pediatric care. The question.
You know, I think, I think the bigger thing this speaks to is a fundamental shift that I agree needs to happen in society is empowering oneself. Turn off the TV. Don't wait for the latest drug, which they have the dumbest names too, by the way. For all the money they're spending, you'd think they do a little bit of test out the names that don't sound like, you know, characters that get killed in a sci-fi movie or something. It just, these horrible names. But to your point, yeah, we can heal ourselves a little better, a lot better. I don't get colds nearly as often as I used to. And it's because I'm in better mental health. I think it's not that hard to figure out. I'm eating better, making smarter choices. I'm drinking less, things like that. So yeah, absolutely. And this goes back to what we were saying before we started recording was, you know, if everybody just meditated 5 minutes a day, we could end wars, you know, things like that. That being the change you want to see in the world. Can you talk about this transformation that happened to you in 2013?
Yes. So 2013, and what I speak to is many people, as if you're listening to this, will think about there are different pivotal points, these fork in the roads in all our lives, which are tremendous opportunities. And we often look at it as such painful times. In modern society, we talk about the midlife crisis, but we put crisis around it. It's really not a crisis. It's a tremendous opportunity for awakening, right? Before we get to the point where we have to heal them from all of the physical wounds. So for me, 2013 was an awakening. I was very, very depressed. I was very sad. I was very blue. I was aimless. And I felt at that point, even though on the outside, everything looked tremendous. I have an incredible husband that adores me. I have a beautiful home. I have 3 children in private school. I had all the material comforts that anybody could have wanted. And I had this incredible job where I got to, you know, call my own hours. I made decent money. I was independent on the outside, but somehow on the inside, Joe, I was so empty. I was so lost and I was so sad. And I remember saying to myself, in the mindset of doing, which is what our society is, you have to do. It's not about stepping back and being, right? It's about doing. So it's like, okay, I'm going to shift. I'm going to volunteer more at my children's temple. I was going to do more work at the school. I was going to work maybe more. I would consider at that time going back to do an additional fellowship with my mentor and my teacher at USC. And I trained in heart and lung transplant with him in anesthesia at USC, and he's a tremendous healer. He's also a healer, but he's also triple boarded and many, many PhDs. So I thought, I'm going to go with him, and maybe it's time for me to go back and do liver transplant or do some kind of transplant for anesthesia. When I did all of those things, I realized when I spent time with him, I wasn't talking about anesthesia. We were talking about spirituality and everything. Again, looking at the synchronicities. Clearly, I was like, I'm not going back to do that. But I continued to do more. And that brought me to more. I was exhausted. I was even more sad. That is when I said, okay, I'm going to completely shift. What are the three things in my life that needed to shift? I'd already knocked out one. It was anesthesia. I wasn't going to do more. I looked at my children, and then I looked at my marriage. My children, I was like, what's bringing me anxiety? What's bringing me is the keeping up with the Joneses and my expectation of them. What do I expect them to do? To get grades, to be the perfect child. I was like, okay, shift. I'm not going to do that anymore.
Yeah, I was going
I'm
to
not
ask
going
you
to.
that because I know you had pressures from your parents. Did you say to yourself when you became a parent, did suddenly occur to you, a light bulb go off? Oh, wait, I'm taking things I learned as a kid that probably shouldn't be applied to my children. Is
Bingo.
that the moment when it happened?
That's exactly what happened. And to be clear as well, my father, the pressures that I had, many of which were really self-imposed. I was always a good student. So my mother, but the expectation that I had from my mother was that it was about being perfect. So my journey, my demons were about perfectionism, right? So you had to look it, you had to be it, you had to have those degrees, but you had to do all of that. And my father wasn't around. My father was not part of my life when I was growing up. And there was a lot of abandonment issues that I had to work through, right? But in a way, if you look at the abandonment issues to a lot of children, a lot of grown adults, we may immediately say, well, I wasn't abandoned. My parents were both there. Abandonment is a feeling. It's not a physical, it can be physical. But if your parent is in pain and unable to be present, they could be there serving you food, but they're not there. Your child feels that abandonment and they experience the same pains of abandonment. So for me, I wanted to be present and I was very present with my children, but it's very hard to have a thriving medical practice, being fully present. And I had three. I had three children within 3 years. So they were, 3, 4, and 6 at the time. So I think when I started looking at my children, when I let go of all those pressures, that was huge for me. Okay, I was going to parent them differently. That worked for a while. But again, I came to this other part that was still heavy. And I said, what is this? And it came down to my marriage. And in fact, it wasn't my marriage, but it was a symbolism of what my marriage represented. And it represented for me this Roberta perfectionism. She brought it into the marriage. It created a set of expectations. And now I was living those expectations. So I couldn't just shift in getting out of the marriage. It was more than that. It was working on healing the pain between this person, the incredible father of my children, who's an amazing person. And I still consider him my life partner. We're not married. We don't have an intimate relationship in that way, but our intimacy when it comes to emotional, intellectual, and spiritual is beyond anything I could have ever dreamed of. So, and this is where I live today. So that was in 2013. What happened was that shift began. That was my awakening, realizing that there are so many dimensions of who I am. Not only is my journey about exploring that, discovering truly who I am, but then living it in the world, living my truth in the world. This is an ongoing, all three of those levels, right? It's all a journey.
You're never finished.
Right.
If you look at things,
thankfully, because if we're finished, we're finished.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, there's that word expectations. Were you dumping, just for clarity, were you dumping expectations on yourself in your marriage or on your husband in your marriage, or both?
Both.
Okay.
Both. Here's the thing. People who are highly judgmental of others, the reason they are, because why? They're really judgmental on themselves.
Yep.
They're really hard on themselves. So once you can really love yourself, full acceptance of all my fragilities, all my challenges, everything, I can then love others in that same way. That became part of my journey of self-love. And this is why I'm here on this earth, Joe. It's not about only sharing the insights that I've learned and empowering people. For me, it's about unconditional love of self. Going back to the perfectionism, I didn't have love of self. And for many years, I talked about self-love. What does that mean? I didn't really know what that meant. I always felt it was a doing. I have to go on a retreat. I have to take some time off. I have to get my manicure. That was self-love. Self-love for me today is creating space for myself and looking at all of the challenges that I have and saying, that was my opportunity to be where I am today. That got me here. I don't regret any of it. Doesn't mean that things could have been looked at differently and I could have given it more time. But everything that has happened to each of us, I truly believe we are where we're supposed to be. We are at this moment.
It also, it's a much saner way to go through life. If you can say, okay, this is where I'm supposed to, as opposed to, damn it, why the hell am I, is that, you're already starting with, in two strikes against you as soon as you ask that question, as opposed to saying, all right, this is where I am. Now what do I do? Got so much, this is a terrific interview. I bounce around with questions as you're talking, and then all of a sudden I forget the question I had. So let's talk about gifted taste. What is it that evolved you? Explain what gifted taste is and how you chose to create that.
Thank you for asking. So Gifted Taste, I support women on their journey of holistic healing, so of holistic wellness. And a lot of this Gifted Taste was really created in a way for me. I am my best customer because how I have evolved to where I am today, I want to be able to hold space for other women, a safe, sacred space for them to go on their journey of healing and empowering, and also to creating their next chapter of what that looks like. I continue to evolve what that looks like for me. And I know what has worked for me. So it's really about creating space for these women, but it is based around women who recognize that they need transformational change in their life or in their life being career or their profession or in their business. But it's about when I truly go and discover who I am, I realize that I am not in this box. I am not just an anesthesiologist. I'm not just a high-powered attorney. I'm not just a mother. There are many layers to myself, and I need to go back to when I was a child, when I was free to explore who I was, not have any constrictions or none of those expectations, explore that to really fully evolve into who I am today. Through evolving who I am today, I will find, I don't want to say just a business model, but I will find a way that is self-sustaining, financially, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, all of that. Part of who we are as women and as individuals is our ability to be self-sufficient. And I talk about spiritual sovereignty, right? And our personal authority. When we can step into truly who we are, our spiritual energy, and when I say spiritual, I mean, it's our relationship with self. That is who we are. When I know that I'm just an energetic being, part of the cosmos, that I am just one in so many gazillion stars, right? That there is a greater message for me being here. We talked about this right before we came on too, is that there's a greater plan for me. I only know a little bit, but when I can unpack what all those things are, I actually come from a place of peace because I know that the universe has my back. And if I continue to flow, when something feels wrong, I step back. I don't go forward and faster, which is what I always did. Something isn't right. I just do more of it, faster of it. And that brought me to actually, right. So Gifted Taste is about creating space. And I do that through personal retreats and I do that through mentoring. And a lot of my mentoring is based around helping women reconnect to their inner light. We've lost our light many throughout life. In different times we do. What we want to, and that's part of being human. We lose our light, but that's polarity, right? The universal law of polarity. We see the dark and we see the light so that we have greater clarity. But when you are off the track sometimes you need a new perspective to be able to kind of get you back on track, right? Or to maybe not get back onto your track to connect with your light and your inner knowing. So much of what I love to do that I found my purpose is to helping people reconnect to their intuitive self, that inner wisdom. That is your guide. That is your beacon. That is your North Star. We've lost our light because we've lost that path to our intuition.
Oh yeah,
So,
we get so hung up on what our goals are or what we think our goals are.
yes.
You know, I mean, I don't know anybody who knew what they wanted to be when they were going to college.
That's
You know,
right.
I was a business major when I started. After 2 years, I'm like, screw this. This is awful.
Yeah.
I changed my major because this is what we do. But then figuring out what you really want to do as opposed to what's easy or what pays the most or what the parents want you to do,
Yes.
that's a difficult thing. And then of course, if you have children, well, that's just another pressure that kind of boxes you in. So
That's
good
right.
on you. And then I imagine the journey for women to figure out what their inner light is. It's not unlike therapy, where nobody comes right out and says, "Here's what you do." It's more like,
Right.
okay, this, if you feel this, therefore what? Why do you feel that? Why do you think that? Why do you engage in that bad habit? Why do you think you do that? And so forth. And
Right.
imagine you steer them into an
Yeah.
enlightening conclusion.
And it's different than therapy because traditional therapy is talk therapy. And I think talk therapy is very powerful. But I think of this as also reflective therapy in a way, because what I'm really doing is asking those questions that you may not have thought about, but you have the answer. But if I can create the foundation and the space for you to delve into that, you have your aha moments, right? And I think that is very traditional in a lot of therapy. But I also don't, very early on, I say this is an engagement for 3 months, 6 months, 2 months, but it won't go longer than 6 months, because I don't want to take away your power where you become then, oh, I just go to therapy, I unload, and this becomes a routine, because that doesn't serve you. And truthfully, it doesn't serve me, because if my goal is to help you see your light, I don't want to take your light and you think that I'm your light. That's the last thing I want to do, because I'm
Yeah.
not.
But it's a very
So
comfortable place for people.
it is.
It's an
And
easy
it's
way. It goes back to
exactly,
what you're saying. It's like, give me the pill, give me the medicine, give me the advice.
that's
And the
exactly
recurring
right.
theme I keep hearing over and over this whole interview is, no. You can do more than you think you can.
Right. And let me
Yes.
show you what that looks like. And then see one, do one, teach one. And the teach one is that we are our greatest teacher, and we'll continue to touch people in our lives. And this is a part of it where it's about higher purpose and of service. When I mentor my children at their age, I have a 14, 15, and a 17-year-old right now. I'm no longer their mother. I'm a mentor to them in that they all throughout their lives now, they know the right thing to do. I don't need to tell them you need to be at home. None of them have curfews. None of them have any of that. But I am a mentor to them. And I said to them too, it's like, when you have a question, if you're going to ask me if you can do this, before you do that, think about the answer to that. Earlier, when they were younger, I would say, well, what do you think mama would say? Okay. But now I say, what is your voice telling you? Sometimes, and majority of the time, they're on the right track, but I also give them the comfort. When there are times that you feel like you're going off, do what you do. And then if I see it's off, I'm those bumpers, right, in a bowling lane, and I'll just go bring you back on. But you're still the one that's directing all of this, because that's what I am for them. I'm a colleague. At this age, they are adults. They are young adults, but they're adults. And how do I keep on empowering them with, all the values? When you were 5 years old, we did Kung Simon family values. We did all of those things. How do you, and that was all about self. How do we expand it now to your service, to your friends and your community, and to the greater world? That is their trajectory. So with my women, it's the same thing. It's now we are grounded in who we are. Who are we affecting? Our children, our spouses, our friends, our family. This is a ripple effect that I think is so important. And so to what you were speaking to earlier is be the change. We can be the change with tremendous ripple effects, and we don't have to do, just be who we are. People will be touched, so that's really what the mentoring is really about. And it's about supporting women who and it may include sometimes having a conversation with their husbands, but my goal is the woman. And these conversations lead also to me talking to their children, to their daughters and their sons. But the root of it is, how do I support these women? Because supporting their children is part of supporting them and supporting but in the end, though, it's about also connecting to the incredible people in my world to mentor them through their business, through a career change. But that's really what my purpose is.
And good on you for finding it, and good on you for sharing it with the world. Tell everybody where they can find you. I assume giftedtaste.com. That's correct?
That's correct. And you can just always email me at roberta@giftedtaste.com, or they can contact you to get my telephone number. That's fine.
I can give your phone number to
what you
people who
can
want to
do is if you feel like there's somebody that would benefit from a conversation with me, please do a text introduction between the two of
Okay.
us, and that would be lovely. But really, a text introduction would be lovely.
Okay. And I will make sure that it's something that they want to do, because I am not into telling other people what to do. They must decide it for themselves. I knew somebody who interned for a chocolatier in New York because she found him, and he said, I don't give out internships. You have to find me. And she went and had this amazing week in New York learning from this guy. And
I love that.
I think those are the most valuable internships. And it kind of makes you wonder, what other wisdom is out there that, isn't advertised. So Dr. Roberta Kung, this was a fantastic interview. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Great talking to you again.
thank you, Joe. It's
Been a while.
always so inspiring to talk to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because I don't always know.
Now,
So
Joe.
if you say so, I believe you. And
Oh,
you're probably not the first to say. I guess
yes.
modesty is my safe space. But we'll talk
Oh,
about that another time. That's
yes,
I'm a comedian. I got my walls up too.
you sure do. Have a beautiful, beautiful day.
Thank you. You too. Are we clear?
Mm.
Are we clear? Yeah, this is the end of the interview, Louise. This is when you yell, and we're clear. All right, I'll do it. And we're clear.
How inspiring is that, right? We're all on a journey. Here's a person who was quite candid about the challenges and struggles she had on her journey, and you might be thinking, oh, she's a doctor. She's got it all figured out. No, she didn't. She was able to identify certain things, and she's like, all right, I'm moving from that to that. And same with you. You can do it also. If you're doing a thing and you don't like that thing, then change the thing. Get out from under the thing. Do less of the thing. Find another thing. You've got the power to do that. Trust your inner voice. If your inner voice is bothered every day, it's probably not digestive issues. It's probably something going on in your life that's nagging at you. And you gotta listen to it. Come on. We all have an internal genius going on. We can figure this out. So just have the courage to do that. Have the wherewithal, have the agency, just say, okay, I gotta change that thing and go on the journey. And how generous is that at the end when she says, just hit me up, and she gives out her email address. Just go ahead, hit her up. And she even said to me, if you know a woman you think could use my services, just go ahead and give them my phone number so they can text me. I've got the power. I've got the power. Okay, I don't have the power to sing.